Europeans are basically a, a very, very narrow segment of this parasitic leadership who are all extremely unpopular in their own countries.
Right.
So you basically have a small cabal that's running the show, that's hostile to Russia, that wants the United States to do its, as usual, do its heavy lifting and dirty
Knock
work in
some
Ukraine.
heads and be an
Yeah,
idiot. Yeah.
they basically want the United States to go and kill Russia for them. That's what they want.
Yeah.
And now they're not getting it. And not only that, but, Daddy's going to tell them, transfer the damn assets to, to, to
To
us,
us.
and we'll take care of you. And I think that they will have no choice but to comply. I mean, at this point, their options are basically to close themselves off into a block to become like Eastern Germany or North Korea,
Mhm.
like a Sparta, like where, oh, we're gonna just like be a military bloc and we're just going to go to war against Russia and people are gonna have to sacrifice their children. Um, and they would really need a false flag event to trigger such a war, but they're not ready for it.
Right.
And, optimistically, they would be ready for it in 28 or 2029 or 2030. But they need Ukraine to keep on fighting until then. They need the war in Ukraine to continue.
Right.
So I think that they are they don't have good cards to play, and I think they're on the back foot. And I think that the Russians and the Americans are now in the position to simply force them to cooperate. and to and to I think that the result of this might be a wave of regime changes in Europe. That Macron government, Starmer government, um, Friedrich Merz government, Alex Staub government in Finland, uh, Maya Sandu in Moldova. All these governments are going to end up being toppled, uh, whether by democratic means, hopefully, or not, we'll find out. But I think that they're losing credibility. They're already extremely unpopular, and they will not be able to realize their fantasy of defeating Russia.
Right. Okay. So I'm assuming that's where Trump just met with Stammer last week. I'm assuming that was just theater, for lack of a better word, or just Trump. Yeah. Okay. Listening, if you would, because
You
I
see,
see no cards that they have, as you said, other than these Russian assets that are frozen. I see nothing else that they have to play in this game.
yeah, honestly, I don't know if that's theater. I mean, what we see is theater.
Right.
What they discuss behind closed doors, I don't know what it is, but we've seen well, one of the dark lords in the British establishment was Peter Mandelson. Well,
Mhm.
he's out.
Right.
Um, Epstein's BFF, Prince Andrew, has been stripped of all his royal titles. That's a humiliation for the royal family. It seems to me that Trump is slowly applying pressure, and he's forcing them to come on board or to cooperate and to let go of their, fantasies of running the world. Uh, one important event that happened that nobody talks about because it's not on anybody's radar is what happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I said this on a number of podcasts in the last few weeks, but I think it's quite important because the British were kind of rigging Bosnia and Herzegovina to be the second front in the West's war against Russia.
Okay.
And you know, what is Bosnia and Herzegovina? It's a small, almost landlocked country in the heart of the Balkans.
Right.
The capital is Sarajevo. Sarajevo is where World War One
Yep.
was detonated with the
Right.
assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. and for people living in Bosnia, this was very obvious because Sarajevo was crawling with British assets, diplomatic intelligence, PR, charities, but all kind of in a network, and people could sense the tensions rising, and there were increasing provocations between Muslims and Croats, between Muslims and the Serbs, between Serbs and Croats. These are three constituent peoples in the
Mhm.
which is why this is like a powder keg. If you light it up, you
It's
get
going
a
to go.
war. And then, if things take the same progression as in 1914, you get a European war.
Right.
And back then, 40 million people, there were 40 million casualties of World War One. And so this is what the Brits were playing with regards to Europe. They were actively playing, risking a European wide war, like a World War III, that would have catastrophic results. And so over the recent months, I've been hearing from a number of people from there that things are actually much, much better since Trump came into the White House.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And 3 weeks ago, I had in an event, I met with one of the cabinet members of Republika Srpska. This is the Russian entity of inside of Bosnia. Sorry, not Russian, Serbian entity inside of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I thought, like, great, I have to ask him what's going on. And so I asked him, is it true what I'm hearing that the situation has improved since Trump came to power? And he said, absolutely yes. He said, like, it's like day and night. Like complete, like things are much, much better. The tensions are way down. Everything is under control. And he says, like, we're no longer dealing with the Brits. We're now dealing with the Americans. And he said, like, where Brits were very abrasive and were very aggressive with us, the Americans are much more understanding and they're very accommodating. So he said things are definitely much, much better.
Wow.
He literally
That's
said it's like day and night, the situation.
fascinating.
And from a Croatian politician, I heard he said like it's like a different planet that they're
Wow.
living on now. Yeah. And so why is this important? It's important because, Bosnia and Herzegovina is not a household name. It's not on anybody's radar. You don't have billionaire donors from Bosnia that are manipulating Trump. You don't have a large voting bloc of Bosnian Serbs or Croats or Muslims in the United States. So there isn't a constituency to appease that somebody would
Mhm.
say, like, oh, well, yes, Trump is doing this for political points or because he has real estate projects he wants to develop in freaking Bosnia and Herzegovina. They just did the right thing seemingly for the sake of doing the right thing. And they may have diffused a powder keg that could have led to
That's it.
World War III on European continent.
Yep, that's it.
And nobody's really talking about this because it's not it's obscure,
Right.
but I think it was very, very important. And it indicates that Trump administration is actually interested in peace for the sake of peace. And
Yeah.
this is their strategy. And they're doing it because this couldn't have happened randomly by
Mhm.
accident. Like should be like a tornado sweeping through a junkyard and randomly assembling a car. That doesn't happen. You had to go there understanding that there's a problem.
Mhm.
You had to tackle the problem
Mhm.
and improve the situation. And one last thing about that, I remember a Croatian, this same Croatian politicians that I referred to in a podcast interview, saying how he was invited to Washington D.C. to meet with officials in U.S. State Department, and he said, well, when I went there, I kind of expected I would have to, tell them where Bosnia and Herzegovina is on the map and explain everything. And he said, like, I was stunned that when I got there, people were very, very well briefed and understood exactly what was going on there. So those are all very encouraging signs. And some of the reasons why I feel relatively optimistic with regards to the 28-point peace plan.
Well, about that though, real quick. So I think that's really significant. You just look at this historical history, if you would, not only World War One, but recently as in what, 30 years ago. And I mean that stirring up trouble, make instability in a place that people don't know, and then it spreads to who knows what. And as you indicated, that could have been World War III. So I think that's very, very key and important that things are being de-escalated, and not only de-escalated, perhaps even peaceful. But go ahead.
No, what I was going to say about the 28-point peace plan, I think it's not a question about whether it's real or not. I think we have enough feedback from Russian officials to know that it absolutely is real. The
Great.
question is uh, how how effective the Trump administration is going to be in making it happen and making it stick.
Yeah.
But I think that with these corruption investigations, and this is also a Trump administration. This is not just a random thing that's in happening in Ukraine by itself. This is there's two Ukrainian agencies that are anti-corruption. They were set up by the Americans. My understanding is that they're being run by the Americans and particularly the CIA. And they're
Of course.
ostensibly their purpose was to fight corruption, but in reality, they were set up to shield certain people from anti-corruption
Yeah.
inquiries. Because remember, under Biden administration, you had Hunter Biden there with wheeling and dealing. You had Nancy Pelosi's son, I think, was involved in some
Yeah.
Ukraine business. Um, I think Mitt Romney had his family members wheeling and dealing there. Um, who else?
The good Mormon.
John Kerry,
John Kerry. I'm not
John
surprised.
Kerry's stepson, I think, was involved. So they wanted to absolutely shield their corrupt dealings. But now under Trump administration, they turned it around and they turned it into an actual effective anti-corruption machinery. And last August, also in August of this year, uh, Vladimir Zelensky tried to squash these agencies by decree. He wanted to disband them because he
Mhm.
realized that they were hot on his trail. But he wasn't able to do that. It blew up in his face, and the investigations continued. And now we got like 100 million embezzlement charge
Yeah.
against his closest collaborators. And now apparently there's a much, much wider inquiry going after tens of billions of dollars. And I think that one is going to prove extremely difficult and embarrassing for people like Ursula von der Leyen and Kaya Kallas and probably BlackRock and who knows what European banks and who knows how far this goes. But it may well be that this was why Trump was in London with Starmer because
Yeah.
maybe he has the goods on them and says like, look, this is going to be very embarrassing for you, so please cooperate with us. If this comes out, it's going to get very, very ugly.